Good morning, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the shed. Now it's been quite a while since I did a shed video. Reason being, it's quite small in my shed and it's pretty difficult to film. But I got a bit of a project to do and I thought I'd share it with you. Now I've been on the lookout for an old Mora clipper or companion, whatever you want to call them. I think they should be called a companion because I wanted one of these. I wanted the older style one with a checkered handle. And a friend of mine who's got a bushcraft school, dry yard bushcraft, had quite a few of these tucked away from student use, and we came to a deal. He'd give me one if I clean one up for him. So that's what I'm going to do. Now both of these are reasonably rusty. They're not completely blunt, but to my standards they're atrocious. Spines haven't been ground, so that's the plan today. I'm going to clean them up, sharpen them, and I'm going to put a 90 on the spine. I'm not going to put a 90 all the way, but they're going to be quite usable after I've finished with them. And another thing I'm going to do while I'm at it, I'm going to reprofile the back edge of my Fallkniven H1. I don't like that little sweep there, and the spine isn't particularly sharp. Now, because this is a laminated steel, the steel on the outside maybe a little bit on the soft side, so I'm not really holding up much hope for it to be in a brilliant scraper and ferro rod striker, but I'm going to do it anyway. As I say, I do not like that clip. The H1 is meant as a hunting knife, but I don't do any hunting and I really can't see the need for that anyway. So that's going, and I'm going to take it down about 1 mil and flatten it off. I'm going to use my knife maker's tools because it's quicker, but along the way I am going to show you alternative ways how to do it with reasonably basic tools. The only thing with reasonably basic tools is it takes a long time, but I'll show you as I go. So first things first, because I'm going to put it in the vise, I'm not going to clean it up first. I'm going to do the back spine first. Now the quick way to do it is on a belt sander or a grinder, but I'm going to attempt, and it may not work, putting a file on it. As I expected, doesn't work. But my field sharpening kit may. TMT diafolds. Black is extra coarse. Well, that works, but it's going to take a long time. Well, just to do the front portion was quick. Obviously I go through all the grits, perhaps stop at a fine at the red. That is now sharp. I haven't got a ferro rod to show you, but trust me, that's sharp. So that's doable with the diafolds, or if you've got the cheaper ones, they will work, but not as well. So I'm going to do it the quick way now. There's a good chance that quite a few of you will have a bench sander for DIY purposes, or if you've got a belt sander, when you hold in your hand, you could always rig something up and turn it upside down, do exactly the same job. Boom, quick. Right, now that's sharp right up until there. I didn't take it all the way, took it to there. The only problem with that now, and that's a worn belt, that's a worn 60, so it's more like, say, about 100 grit now. You would get rusting on that because of the marks. You see, the rust's best friend is scratches. The more scratches you take off, the least chance of rusting. Well, I'm going to do the other one now in exactly the same way. One little tip, if you've only got one kind of grit, start off holding it hard and pressing it, and then loosen off the pressure you put on, because that'll reduce the depth of the scratches. Now that one's done, nice and quick. And saying, if you haven't got a belt sander or some kind of power grinder or something, it's going to take you a while if you want to do that. So I would suggest just doing that portion to like your ferro rod. If you've got plenty of time, great. Take your time on it. But that is the quickest way and probably the best way. Right, now I'm going to clean up the flat. I'll do it the quick way first, show you the quick way, and that is 3M mops, and I got 3 different grades. I think the finest one is a 400, I think the roughest one is a 240, and the other one is somewhere in between. I may be wrong, that's what I think they are. So I'll put the roughest one on first. I'm going to put a mask on for this. Now, you're probably thinking, that didn't do a very good job, but there's a reason. These are old, and over the years they've taken a patina, and the patina helps with the rust. So I'm not actually going to take them to shiny clean, and because the stuff's pretty thin anyway, it's only, what is it, 2mm, or a tad over 2mm. So I'm just going to go through them and get the surface discoloration off, so they're going to be pretty grey, but I think seeing as the age on the knife and the patina might as well stay on. One thing I'll have to do as well, I'll probably have to give them a little touch again on the grinder, because doing this can round it off a little bit, but it'll only need a little touch. Well, I'm going to go through the 3 different grits now. Unfortunately, the battery just conked out on my big mask, so I haven't got a hell of a lot of grinding to do. I wouldn't grind a blade or grind a handle without wearing that thing, because it's really bad for your lungs, but I'll risk it with this for now. Now, one thing I haven't done, I haven't gone on the bevel with the wheel. Reasoning being, because I can really round that putting it on the wheel. I want to keep that bevel as flat as possible for when I sharpen it, because I'm going to sharpen the 2 of them by hand. Well, I'm pleased with that. I did run the spine over the last mop, and it's plenty sharp enough. I don't have to put it back on the grinder. So that's the blade cleaned and the spine done. Pretty easy when you got the right stuff. Not that easy when you haven't, because I'm now going to show you the slow way. Whether I'll finish it off the slow way is another matter. Right, the slow way. And I would suggest a block of wood, pretty flat, and wet and dry paper. Now these 2 are slightly worn, but not worn enough to throw in the bin, so I'm going to use these. And that's a 120 grit, a little bit worn, and that's a 240 grit, a little bit worn. I'm also going to use double-sided carpet tape from the DIY shop. And after my first pass over to clean the blade, I'm going to do it on the bevel. Start sharpening. So this is basically your cleaning the flat and your sharpening kit all in one, the cheap way. Obviously if you've got stones, use the stones for the bevel, but not for the flat. You don't want to use your stones on the flat. Now this is what we use to clean our sanding belts with. I'm pretty sure you can use the eraser what you used to get years ago for ballpoint pen eraser. Don't think anybody uses them anymore, but you never know, you may have one in use. So that's nice and clean. I'm going to use a non-slip mat. I'll use a drop of water. You don't have to use a drop of water. That works. It's slower, it's messier, but it does work. I'll do a bit more with that now, and then I'm going to start that bevel off. Now don't go forward or you will cut into that. This is a sharpening technique. Now I will be honest with you, this takes a while, but the results are very good. I'm not going to carry on with this because I recently re-uploaded a video of me sharpening a knife with this method, so I don't particularly want to do it again because it is slow, but you do get good results. So as you can see, that's a start on the bevel. Still blunt mine, because what they've probably done is when these have gone blunt, they've just put a secondary bevel on for the next group to make life easier. And I don't like secondary bevels, but you probably know that. So that's that technique. And another thing you can do on the spine, I always use the end though. Don't use the middle, because that's, you're working abrasive for there. You very rarely go there because these tend to tip up. I'm going to get on now with sharpening these on the DMT stones, and yes, I've got a video of that as well. I decided to do a little bit more work. Seeing as I had this stuck to the block, I thought I'll do a bit of work on it, but my god, they're blunt. Oof, real blunt. Now, doing it this way doesn't take a lot of material off. It's accurate, but it doesn't take a lot of material. So if you did get something that's as blunt as these, I would probably suggest buying a cheap, if you can't afford to buy good stuff, buy a cheap double-sided rough oil stone and work it on that, because this is slow. Oh, these are ridiculously blunt. Oh, this one's a bit better. Oh, that one's a lot better. That one is atrocious. So basically, just go through the grits. In the other video, I'm using worn belts, worn cut grinder belts, but there's nothing wrong with doing it with this. They last a bit longer, obviously, because they're cloth belts and these are just paper, so they do last longer. That's why I use them, and they're a good byproduct. There's nothing wrong with this method. And if you want to do a convex sharpening, you can do exactly the same, but put a thin piece of foam like a mouse pad in between. Just remember, don't press too hard or you'll go from that to that. You don't want that. I want to warn you about something. To flatten that on an extra coarse DMT stone just took 20 minutes. And it still needs another half an hour's worth of sharpening. So if I was you, if it's that blunt, throw it in the bin, buy another one. They're cheap. I don't know if you can see this, but as soon as you get an even burr all the way, and when I say burr, I mean when you hold it in the sun, the edge shines back at you. That's when you can stop and go on to the next grit. 20 minutes. Now this one's not too bad. I reckon it'll take 5. Just a warning. Well, that one was a bit quicker. I would say about 15 minutes to get that flat with a burr. And the reason being is because it had a micro bevel on it, so I had to sharpen that out. But I just want to show you actually how much steel I've taken off. I must have taken easily a mil off that edge, but that's the hard work done. And I'll tell you something, whoever the guy was or girl that said Scandies are easy to sharpen is an idiot, because they take forever to do it properly. If you want to stick a little micro bevel on it, yeah, they're easy. Just a note on a Mora. After you've done all this work and put a lovely flat 0 Scandi edge on it, do you really want to hammer that through a log? Now I know I've done a video and I batten quite often, but if I was going out into the woods and relying on that, I wouldn't be happy. I'd want either a big, thick, ugly old knife to batten wood with, or an axe. Because at the end of the day, although it's cheap, when you sharpen that and precisionally sharpened it to a mirror edge, do you really want to nick it on something? I don't think so. You want to maintain that and keep that edge as long as possible. So if you're going to do all that work, and I haven't even finished yet, on something like this, or a more expensive knife, do you really want to whack it through a log? Nah, get yourself an axe or a beater of a knife to do that with. On to coarse now. Didn't take very long on the coarse. On to the fine. Getting somewhere now, onto the extra fine. That's me gone through the DMTs. Both of these have got a nice little burr in them, so I know they're sharp and they're equal. That's the hard work done, and that took me 1 hour and 5 minutes. Now for the easy bit, I'm going to use my micro mesh strops now, put a mirror on them. I put my leather strop now upside down in the vise, and I'm going to go through the grits with these to get that nice mirror polish. "20 minutes of micro mesh stropping. They're not perfect, but pretty damn good. But you can see how much I've taken off. Well, there you go. 2 old Mora companions sharpened up to a mirror polish. Let's see how sharp they are. That's good enough for me. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that belly out on the knife maker's grinder. I don't like it, and I want to put a sharp edge on the back spine anyway. I'll zip through that because that's not something you're going to do if you haven't got a knife maker's grinder, especially on a knife that costs as much as this one does. But what you are going to be interested in, I'm going to put a mirror edge on this. Now, it doesn't actually need it because it is shaving sharp anyway. But I was asked by a subscriber if I would show how I sharpen a convex grind. And I'm going to show you. I'll start off now. I'll show you a little gadget I made many years ago. And this is basically a strop for abrasive paper with give. So in there I've got a mouse pad which has some give in it. And what you do is you basically strop the knife on that, but there's a secret to this, because what you don't want, imagine now that's your convex bevel. If you push too hard, you're going to turn it into that. So it's got to be light strops, not pushing hard at all. So you've got to go through all the grits before you polish it, or it's not going to be good, especially if you want to keep the knife for a long time. I buy loads of knives, so I rarely need to sharpen a convex grind, because most knives that come with a convex grind are really good steel, and this is a laminated 3G, and this is good stuff. So really speaking, I don't need to sharpen this, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you were sharpening it in the field, well, you could always make a little one of these, but you're not really going to need to. You think about it, what bluntens a blade? Chopping and hitting knots when you're battening. But because that edge is like that, you only go through the wood, and then the bevel opens the wood up. So there's not a lot of, unless you hit a really nasty knot, there's very little contact with the edge. So sharpening a convex grind is not something you're going to have to do very often. Now, I have seen guys, DBK for instance, the Dutch boys, sharpening a convex grind and doing it on waterstones, and as they're doing it, they're rocking the blade, but they've had a lot of practice. I can do it, but it's not very accurate. If you do it this way, with not a lot of pressure, you get excellent results, and you've got zero chance of cocking things up. Well, I'm going to grind that edge off first. I'm going to just put a little mark where I want to take it off. So I'm going to take that much off. Now the sensible thing to do is to mask that edge. So I'm going to put some electrical tape over the edge. I've also cut a block of wood, because I'm going to put that on the flat of the grinder and grind it off on top of that. I'm going to put my roughest grit I got, which is a 60, on first, and then I'm going to work my way down the grits to a 600. Got some water to dip in. Right, I've gone through 2 grits now, and I'm going to change tactics. Done. The only thing, caught the rubber a bit. So there we are, there's a nice sharp edge on it, and it's gone to a 400 grit. I've gone off a bit there, but I'm not too worried. Take the tape off now, see if I'm happy with it. Ooh, that's better. It's now straight to where there was a kick in it, and the spine is nice and sharp. So I'm pleased with my spine, it's nice and sharp, and I've got rid of that kick. It's now flat. On to polishing this edge then. It's a shame mine, because there's nothing really wrong with it, but I'm going to do it for my subscribers. Well, the grit on there now is a 3200. Well, I'm going to start on there, but I'm not going to do a lot of work on there. I just want to get these little scratches out. Needs a lot more than that. I really can't be bothered to do any more than that. It's razor sharp now, and I've only gone through 2 grits, so I think I'm just going to polish it now. There's absolutely no need for me to go any further. It has polished up, but it's not a mirror. It doesn't need it. But that's the technique. This stuff is so hard. It's not doing a hell of a lot. I got to put a lot of effort in to get a little bit of a result. So I'm just going to polish it. Usual thing, strop. But instead of doing it as I normally do it and putting quite a bit of weight on that one flat bevel, I'm going to rock it back and forth a bit. That's sharp. So if you fancy a knife with a convex grind, I suggest you buy a high-end Fallkniven, because if they're that hard to sharpen, then they're going to be pretty hard to get blunt. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. That didn't quite go to plan, but there we are. That happens. I got a sharp spine. I got a polished edge. Not quite as polished as I wanted, but there was no need. That's the technique, and let me tell you, it polishes up a lot easier on cheaper steel. I look forward to using this. Thanks for watching. See you next time. A thumbs up is always appreciated. I'm gonna fucking dust. Luke, you are my son.